Hey, what is up everyone? I'm RinkuTalks, and with the power of hiring an editor, I can finally give you the edited version of my PA official Dark Knight Q&A for Pre-Awakening, which was live streamed on twitch.tv/RinkuTalks. I hope you enjoy. What do I play the most? In the past 3 years of playing this entire game is Dark Knight. I have played this is the class that I go to in 1v1s. This is the class I go to in No War in Siege back in the day, back in my prime. This is the class that I go to basically kill things. We're gonna start off with the lore. Video lore, whoosh. Okay, Dark Knight lore, official class overview. Before recorded history, a holy tree took root at the highest point of the forest. The goddess, Sylvia, descended upon the tree accompanied by the spirits of nature. She named the tree Kamasilv and gave birth to new life. The baby that bore resemblance to the brightness of the sun was named Janelle, and the one who bore the darkness of the moon was named Vedder, which Vedder is in all the skills. It is like the theme of Dark Knight. As Sylvia embedded her will into Kamasilv, Vedder and Janelle birthed a prosperous civilization. All was harmonious for a long time until the spirits of darkness brought disaster upon Kamasilvia. The descendants of Sylvia had no strength of their own, and they relied on Kamasilvia and the power of their goddess for protection. But the elves who descended from Janelle and Vedder drew energy from Kamasilv to purify the spirits of darkness. The Vedder, realizing that they were going to fail, burned through the energy of the tree and nature itself to cleanse the spirits. But it came at great cost. Oh no, they burned down the tree. Kamasilv slumbered, and heartbreak resonated amongst the elves. As the great tree started to wilt and became dormant, the Vedder pursued new paths to power. Through the process, they could burn through nature's energy to amplify their power. This caused tension with the Janelles. The Vedder split into two factions, the Hib, who thirsted for power above everything else, the Dark Knights who remained neutral, yet still upheld the rights of Kamasilv. The tension eventually caused the Dark Knights to leave Kamasilv in a bid to avoid conflict, and they remain in exile. They're banished? They long to return to their homeland, yet their eventual reunification with the Janelles may still be a long way off. This is crazy. So we're exiled from Kamasilvia? Is this true? There are CCs, there are protections, and there's a lot of other terms. But protection is like, there's different types of protection. You can be invincible, which means you're invincible to everything, all damage, all CCs, even, I think grapples even. Invincible is like invincible. But other types of protection is super armor. Super armor, you're not actually invincible. You have your DPs increased a lot. In super armor, you can't really be CC'd, which is crowd control, it's the next thing we're going to go over. But you can be grabbed or grappled out of super armor. So it's not as protected as invincibility. And you can actually, because it's not invincible, you can break someone's super armor by doing enough damage. CC is crowd control. CC is like, if you stiffen someone, they're like dazed for a few seconds. There's other types of CC, like a knockdown or floating. Stiffen is the only one that doesn't really go towards your counter. You can have a total of 2 different types of CCs before someone stands up. So you can like knock them down and float them, which like kind of knocks them in the air for a second. If your opponent is CC'd, like on the ground, like if you knock them down, they're on the ground, they're downed, your down attack skills will do extra damage because it's a down attack. If you're 1v1ing, right, you're trying to fish for a CC, because when you CC your opponent cannot fight back until the CC is over. And that's the whole goal. Dark Knight is a class that is very fragile, so it's very important that you get the first CC and you go in for the kill and you get out of there if you can't like get it off as soon as possible, because you're gonna die. Like, you're one of the classes that are gonna almost be guaranteed to die in a single combo. Whereas you might be fighting like a striker and they might be super bulky. You might have to get 2 combos or get more gear to like actually trump them. Scarring Slash, again, I wouldn't really use this. It's really slow and goes to the side. Spirit Satiation, I wouldn't use this if you have potions. If you don't have potions, that's fine. Unclosed Scar is just an upgrade to Scarring Slash. Sudden Attack, I love the skill. It's not strong though. Unveiled Dagger is one of the most important skills to use because it gives you a buff for 5 seconds. It's not important as the Valk buff, but this gives you an attack speed buff for plus 10% for 5 seconds. Hidden Strike is one that a lot of DKs recommend. I actually don't use it. I highly recommend, even if you do use it, to lock it and put it on a quick slot. I don't think people use it nowadays in combos just because of the way Dark Knights have changed. Shadow Bullet is a PvP only skill. It's a stiffness, unprotected. I see people use it in between dashing sideways. They'll like dash sideways, Shadow Bolt, and dash again sideways, because sometimes you won't expect it, but it's pretty hard to use this effectively. Darkness Burst is a pretty good skill to like spam like at level 1, but other than that I wouldn't really use it. Airstrike. If you use airstrike, you see how you teleport? You see how it's invincible? You're invincible while you're teleporting. When you land, you're actually open, like really open. They're just gonna like block it and kill you. Slanted balance, if you want to know combos, this is your #1 combo starter. Even after awakening, you're gonna use the skill all the time. So slanted balance, this is like the secret of PvP. The problem is, you have to go up close to do it. That is the problem with the skill. If you go up close as the Dark Knight, you're really vulnerable to getting killed. This does have a forward guard, and it floats. So it's a protected CC. This skill is another skill you don't really need to upgrade to utilize. You want to get the float and the forward guard, but upgrading for more damage is not going to be too much of a difference. Lucius Snare, not so important. I've never seen Dark Knights actually use this. Pervasive Darkness. For pre-awakening, it's actually good, and what this is you press A after almost any skill you have, and it will activate. There's a few skills in this game that actually debuff your target. This debuffs your target for all DP -10 for 10 seconds, and keep in mind that this debuff affects everyone attacking your opponent. Ravage Rake, I wish this was cool. The problem with this is it's very slow, it's very unprotected. If you're using this in PvP, it's like a death sentence. And there's a flow, just an extra skill. Repeated Annihilation, shout out to Blade. So as of like a PvP perspective, I don't think this would be useful in PvP because it's unprotected, it has no CCs, it doesn't really do anything. But Blade pointed out this is actually good DPS. And I actually started using it after he said that because on the journey 1 through 52, it's actually a useful skill. If you use Wheel of Fortune or something really heavy hitting and you CC them and they're on the ground, you could use this. Even without it being a down attack, it's actually a good skill where you could spam it and do a decent amount of damage. It's decent DPS. Nocturne. So this skill, it allows you to go invisible. It's like Sork, but you can't stay invisible for like 10-20 seconds. But that's a good skill to like juke your opponent and get like, you could possibly like go behind them and use a CC. Enforcement, this is my go-to filler skill. This does a lot of damage. The flow is what makes it really good. So not only do both the enforcement and the flow do really good damage, but the flow has a CC of floating. So if I get a knockdown or float or whatever, I actually use this afterwards to get that combo like really going. Pierce Command, I was saying this earlier, like it's such a cool concept of skill. You like snap your fingers and things explode. I've never seen anyone use this. It doesn't really do any damage at all. Probably wouldn't worry about this. I probably wouldn't get the skill. Lunacy of Veteran, on the other hand, is one of our most important skills. Kama Sylvia Slash. This is like I think a critical skill learned pre-awakening. This is like another really heavy hitter, so I'd recommend everyone to get the skill. Wheel of Fortune, I've been like hovering over the skill. This is our bread and butter. Lunacy of Veteran is our like second heaviest hitting skill, but I think Wheel of Fortune is more iconic and like the skill to go to. You should probably be using this off cooldown as much as possible. It does like it's probably the heaviest hitting thing we have. A really short cooldown, shorter than the other skill, Lunacy of Veteran. And like I said, this is the other skill you want in a quick slot because having this on quick slot is the #1 thing that you want to practice, because when Awakening comes out, if you're not used to using it on quick slot, you might be really confused. Like, how do I use Wheel of Fortune in Awakening? Like, why isn't this working? Like, what do I do? Obsidian Ashes. This is our only ranged pre-awakening attack, which actually is kind of interesting. Yeah, most people say it's useless. Most people do not use the skill at all ever. But if you're not in combat, if you're like standing on a rock or something and you want something long range to throw at someone, you can get the skill, and it also binds them. If it hits them, like it could bind them. So it's kind of good. Corrupt Ground. This is a skill that I would say like Kama Sylvia Slash is really good in only pre-awakening. In Awakening, I honestly would never use a skill. It does a lot of damage. It stuns on good hits, but it's really close ranged. And also you have your passives. Passives are like, after you have your necessary skills, passives are the most important thing, and then you want to max all your like useless skills. Like you don't need Slanted Balance to be upgraded because you don't need the damage from that. But having like your accuracy and magic damage on every single skill can really help us. There's a lot of combos with Awakening, but pre-awakening there's not many options. My go-to combo, by the way, for Dark Knight is basically Unveiled for the buff. Then I would do Slanted, and then I would do Pervasive. So you knock them down and give them the DP debuff, and then you can go into an Enforcement, and if you do the Flow Enforcement, you can knock them down again, and then they're still on the ground, their CC is extended, so they're struggling, and you can go on your heaviest hitting skills. Wheel of Fortune and Lunacy of Veteran are our heaviest hitting things. Basically, Unveiled gives you the buff, you hit B, it's a quick jab, and if you're running around, you can like do Unveiled Dagger, you can do Airstrike, and run around and stuff, but you got the buff up, right? You got the attack speed buff up. Then when you're close to someone, you go for the Slanted Balance. Now you want to do the Pervasive Darkness, the debuff, right after you CC them. Using Pervasive Darkness is a huge difference in damage, so if you're not using Pervasive Darkness, you're missing out on a lot. You could do Wheel of Fortune, and then pervasive, and then your other heavy hitting attack. And if you can do it fast enough, that debuff is going to do a lot of damage. Keep in mind, I'm not doing any damage to these guys because I have 110 AP. I have a plus 13 and the quest weapon. This is Nocturne, so you can target on them and go behind them, but you don't have to do that. It has a long cooldown. Let me use it again. Instead of going behind him, you can back up, and you can move your camera and go somewhere else. To actually engage, you have iframes on your dashes, and you have some skills. So you could, if you're feeling ballsy, you can go for the airstrike, and you see how it CC'd him. But if you miss that CC, you're really open. So you only want to use that when you're feeling ballsy. You could use that to run away. But honestly, one of the best ways to initiate is to not initiate and bait them to initiate on you. So if he were like to run at me, you could go into protection on like a Wheel of Fortune. And 1, you're protected, and 2, if they're not ready for you to like attack, you actually would have just CC'd him. So if he was dashing around but he was unprotected, he could have just got like CC'd. Airstrike is an initiation, but it's not one you want to do unless you know what you're doing. One of the fastest things to do is do a slanted balance. That's one of the best ways to start anything. The only problem is it requires them to be like really close to you. When you get your awakening, you're a lot more ranged based. You have 4 ranged skills that not only hit really, really hard, but you can use them, interchange them in any order you want, and like not even approach your enemy. Do I know when Awakening is coming out? I have no idea, but hopefully they tell me before it comes out so I can make some guides and stuff. I managed to make the pre-Awakening guide the night before they released Dark Knight, so it might be something like that. But yeah, we have no idea yet.
Whoa, wait a second. This just in. Awakenings on Xbox are to be released on May 29th, according to an official statement from Pearl Abyss. Well, I guess that means it's time to make more videos. I love you, and I'll see you next time.